Hey friends, let me give you a heads up. Today's talk is part of a unique teaching series. Rather than telling you what John the Apostle wrote about Jesus in his famous biography about his life, I'm going to tell you the stories that John saw in character as John. So lean in, fire up that imagination, and let me paint a picture of Jesus of Nazareth through a lens that you've never looked through before.
I love to eat. Anybody else love a good meal, good food? Some of you more than others. Teenagers, I used to be one. Actually, I was one when I met Jesus, and I was always hungry. I was always hungry. My older brother was bigger than I was. I had the big appetite. Loved a good meal with friends. The problem with following Jesus is that when you follow a guy who's traveling from town to town, who no longer works a job and is just dependent on the hospitality in each location, sometimes the meal plan was a little inconsistent. Sometimes there was not much to eat. Sometimes we went a little bit hungry following Jesus. And then other times you got invited to somebody's wedding feast. Let me tell you, good eating. The only time that regular middle class, lower class people like I grew up, the only time that we had a really good meal was when you got invited to somebody's party. And there was a time when I was young and first following Jesus, he got invited to a party, which means all of us who were following him at that time, well, we all kind of got rolled in. I wrote about it in my book, chapter 2, and I'm going to talk a little bit today from a few other chapters, 3 and 4. You can follow along if you want. It was just a party. It was just food, but something happened there that changed everything. And I'm not sure it was for the better. But I was there for the food. It was in Cana, and I know you may not know the geography very well. Jerusalem was where all of the important things happened. It's where the temple was. It was where all of the leaders of the country were. It was kind of in the south. Up in the north part of the country where I was from, Capernaum was right on the sea. And if you go from there, if you go west, you get to Cana. And then if you go further, you get to Nazareth, where Jesus was from. Well, Cana was, a couple hours from Nazareth. And Jesus must have known someone. I never found out if it was his cousin or somebody that he knew, but he got invited to this wedding. And Nathaniel, one of my friends, who was also following Jesus, he got invited too because he was from Cana. And so we all went there. And back in that day, weddings were an even bigger deal than your day. Some of you, I've been told, you have food at weddings. We had food for a week at weddings. We partied. It was a great thing. And sometimes, other than fish, the only time that I would get meat was at big parties like that, because you must understand, we had no way to refrigerate food. Once you butcher a cow, you got to eat it all. So you bring your friends there, and we would feast. And so we went there, and Jesus' brothers were there. His mother was there. We were eating. We were having a good time. And I don't remember exactly, 4 or 5 days into the celebration, I'm sitting there. Jesus is sharing a story. He's just talking. We're all hanging out. And his mother comes over with a very intentional, determined look on her face. You can tell sometimes when people are walking and they zero in on you, and she has got to say something to Jesus. And of course, it was none of my business, but I was sitting next to him. And as a teenager, anytime anything was going on, I needed to know. I didn't want to be left out of any loops. So I pretended like I was, really invested in the bread that I was eating, and I kind of leaned back so that I could kind of overhear, because he was sitting next to me. What's going on? So Mary comes up to Jesus, and she said, "Jesus, we have a problem." Okay. They're almost out of wine. Now, to you, you may be thinking, wait, wine? At a party, oh yes. Okay, we didn't have all of the great soft drinks, and we didn't have this Planet Shaker stuff that you did. We had water and we had wine. And if you were throwing a party, you had better have a lot of wine, because there are a lot of people. Now, before you go and think that we were all a bunch of drunkards, you must understand that the wine was cut with water so much that you had to be very determined if you wanted to get drunk. And there were always a few of those uncles that would come to the party just to get drunk. It was awkward. I know that doesn't happen anymore in your societies, but it used to. Okay? But it was a major problem if you ran out of wine, because in our culture, someone getting married it's almost a contract between the people who are invited and the bridegroom who's throwing the party. In fact, in my time, and we never would have done this in Capernaum because we all had better manners, I heard of times when people attended the wedding and didn't bring a gift, you could sue them because they were freeloaders. There was an expectation that as the host, you would provide enough wine, and there were still a few days left. We're out of wine. It's a disaster. I didn't know this poor guy from Cana, but I know Nathaniel was his friend, and he would have been ruined. His reputation would have been ruined. It was a big deal. Juicy gossip too. Oh no, what happened? So I'm leaning in, I'm listening, and Jesus, he said to her in the kindest way possible, "My dear lady, what does that have to do with me or you? We're just guests. It's not our problem. Why are you coming to me with this?" And then he said something weird. He said, "My time has not yet come." Now, at the time, I didn't know what it meant. I'm just like, oh yeah, my time has not yet come. Time for what? It wasn't until later when I wrote the book, I thought, I'd better write that down. Turned out Jesus was going to do some amazing things. But at that point, he hadn't done any miracles. He was just a teacher. And I was spellbound by his words. He said, "Mother, it's not time yet." And just like your mother, she heard what her son said, completely ignored it, went to get the servants and brought them and said, "Listen, you do whatever Jesus tells you to do. We need to fix this problem." Okay? I'm listening. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is good. A little tension. I want to see what happens. What is Jesus going to do about the wine? Is he going to send servants into town to buy more wine? Because you got to understand, Cana is not a big place. If this had happened in my hometown, I know 4 or 5 places you could go in an emergency to get some more wine. Not in Cana. So the servants go to Jesus. And being the curious person that I was, I decided to just kind of, watch in the background, because what's he going to do? He says to the servants, "Okay, I need something that can hold water. Do you have any large vessels? Do you have any pots?" They start looking around. They say, "Well, we've got these stone jars for washing." We were very serious about hand washing, and you had to do it properly. And we have these stone jars, 20, 30 gallons apiece, 6 of them, so that all of the guests could wash their hands and eat. He said, "Perfect. Fill them up all the way to the top with water." So the servants go and they do all of that. Then he says the craziest thing. He says, "Dip some of this out and take it to the master of ceremonies so that he can taste the wine." And I kind of looked at them and I'm like, "It's water." Did we have plenty of water? We need wine. Jesus, the problem is not that we're out of water. The problem is we're out of wine. What are you doing? But of course, I'm not going to question the teacher. Obviously, he's trying to teach them a lesson. Maybe he's trying to communicate to us that we should be satisfied with water. I don't know what he's doing. They don't know what he's doing. But they're servants, so they do what they're told. So they dip some out and they take it. And so I just have to know. So I'm following at a distance, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm kind of minding my own business, but I'm really listening in. And I see them. They take this little cup to the master of ceremonies, and he drinks it, and he goes, "Where did you get this?" "Over there. This This guy gave it to us. And he stops the whole procession. He stops the whole party. Hey, everyone, I need your attention. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be super awkward. It's time to go. I'm finding the other guys, right? And Andrew, we should get going now. This is going to be awkward. He's going to call them out. He has this thing in his hand and he said, my friends, let me tell you about your generous host. He said, most of the time, I do this all the time. He said, people give the good wine at first, and then once Uncle Frank has had too much to drink, and he can't tell the difference, and they bring out the cheap wine. But let me tell you, this guy here saved the best stuff for now. What an awesome host he is. And I went, what? Has this guy lost his mind? It's water. I saw it in the pot. So they start serving, and I'm like, well, let me have some of this water. If it's that good, I drink it. And wow, let me tell you, it was the best wine I've ever had in my life. Then where did this come from? I went over to the jars because I saw where they were, and 6 jars full of wine. What? I was dumbfounded, and I realized Jesus turned the water into, whoa! I bring the other guy. Did you know what happened? Andrew, here. Did you taste this? Yeah, man, it's good. Do you know where this came from? No. Tell me the vineyard. I need to get some. Jesus made it out of water. It's magic. I couldn't believe it. Andrew couldn't believe it. I had some and I thought, ooh, boy, I would really like to have some more. But if I get drunk at the party with Jesus, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So I just had one. But it was good. Everybody had a great party. And from that moment, something powerful changed. And at first I thought it was a good thing. Because every one of us who are following Jesus, if we didn't already believe there's something special about him, we did now when he turned water into wine. Look, you got to understand, at that point, I had never seen a miracle in my life. I didn't know such a thing was possible. I believed that this guy was special, and I think he's the Messiah. But then he does that. I'm like, well, it figures. I knew he was different. And up until that point, everything about Jesus had been about the message. It was all about what he was saying. But then he changes the water into wine. And at first, only the servants and a couple of us guys knew. But by the end of the wedding, everybody knew. They were like, oh, that's the Jesus guy. That's the wine guy. He became Jesus, the wine guy, not Jesus, the teacher. Well, we went back to Capernaum, my hometown. It's a several-hour journey. And man, we're there for a week, and all of a sudden people come up to me, hey, John, you're following that Jesus guy, right? Yeah. Did he really turn water into wine? I'm like, well, yeah, he did. It was delicious. There's probably some still after. He made like 100 gallons of it. And that's all everyone was talking about. We went to Jerusalem, and because you had to go back there for feasts and parties and things like that. We went to Jerusalem, and while he's there, Jesus, in typical Jesus fashion, is teaching. He's offending the religious people in town by the way that he teaches. And people had heard, people from Cana and Capernaum had traveled down there, and people started going around saying, hey, that's the wine guy. That's the wine guy. That's the guy who made stuff turn into wine. And somebody, we were there like 2 days, somebody comes up with their kid who's limping, and they say, hey, if you can change water into wine, can you heal my kid who can't walk right? And Jesus said, yeah, I can. And I saw a kid who couldn't walk right start to walk, and I thought, he can do that too. And people started bringing, they would bring someone who was clearly possessed by a demon to Jesus, and convulsing, and they're drooling, and the slobber, and we're all like, ooh, run. And they say, Jesus, can you do anything about them? And he said, get out. And immediately the person was in their right mind again. He did miracles and signs. And it was awesome. It was wonderful. But that's all anyone was talking about was the signs. In fact, the religious people came to Jesus and they said, now listen here, you. What gives you the right to start saying the stuff that you're saying? Why don't you show us some signs to prove that you really are who you say you are? It was about the miracles. One of the leaders, a guy named Nicodemus, came to Jesus in the middle of the night so that his friends wouldn't know that he's talking to this controversial guy. And he said, hey, look, I've seen the miracles. What makes you different? Miracles, miracles, miracles. That's all anyone talked about then was miracles, and it was frustrating. Because he had a message that was different, and nobody even listened. They just wanted him to fix stuff. Well, it finally came time to go back home. And instead of going around Samaria like any sane person would do, Jesus decided to take us right through the middle of Samaria. And that's a different talk for another day. But just imagine the cities that you go to and the parts of towns that you would never go to on purpose. The streets that you would never go down on purpose. The ones where you hide your kids and lock all of your valuables away as you pass through. Okay, that was Samaria. Why would we go there? Jesus starts talking to a woman, and people from town start coming out to hear him, and something crazy happened. In Samaria, no one had heard he was the wine guy. And everyone came and listened to him teach, and he taught, and they asked us to stay for days. And I said, Jesus, please, why? Don't make us stay in Samaria. Can I just go on ahead of you to Capernaum? And then you just kept, no, okay. But for days, they listened. And I thought, well, maybe the problem is in Jerusalem, all of those snobby Jews, they really need evidence and proof. When we get back to our hometown, people are going to listen to the message again because that's what I signed up for. I never heard anyone talk like they knew God. I never heard anyone explain why the law tells us to put others before ourselves and why we're supposed to forgive and why we're not supposed to take each other to court and why we're supposed to do all of these things. And so I wanted it to be about the message again. So we went back north and we went back to Cana. We got back to town. And as soon as we got in town, here's the buzz again. Oh, it's the wine guy. The wine guy's back. Jesus, the wine guy. Seriously. Okay? He's getting mobbed and he just wants to come. We're tired. I was frustrated because I just wanted him to be able to get to sleep. He just wanted to teach. Nobody wanted to listen to his teaching. They just wanted him to fix stuff. Hey, can you make wine for me? He gets mobbed by these people. And as everyone's pushing in, and I'm starting to get claustrophobic, this group of tall, broad-chested guys just start muscling their way through the crowd. And I saw them from a distance. I thought, oh, here comes trouble. Right? I'm not very physically imposing. I did not make a good bodyguard for Jesus. These guys are pushing their way through the crowd. They get all the way up to the front. And before the guy behind the muscle men spoke, I knew who he was because he was from my hometown. Guy from Capernaum. I don't know his name, but I recognized him with the fancy robes and the rings and the necklace hanging around and the fancy hairdo that, like, who has time to do their hair? But he did. I recognized him because the governor of that whole region, Herod, he worked for him. He was one of his mob bosses. Did not like this guy. I did not want him anywhere near Jesus. And he pushes his way up to the front of the line and he says, you're Jesus of Nazareth. He said, yeah. He said, I need you to come with me right now to Capernaum because my son is sick and I need you to come with me immediately to heal him. I thought, well, this is awkward. And Jesus, surrounded by all of these people, and somebody shaking the finger and come, he silences the crowd. He puts his hands up, and everybody stops. And it's just the power of somebody that it's different. It's hard to explain unless you were there. Shh, quiet, quiet, quiet. Everybody quiets out. Shh. Whole crowd gets quiet. He's about to talk, and I'm hoping that he's about to just smack this guy. Get out of here, you. I'm here for the real Jews. Jesus lets out a long breath, like he's holding the thought for a minute. And then he says, you people will never believe unless you see signs and wonders. And I thought, ooh, okay, this is getting awkward in a different way than I expected. And inside, I'm like, you telling Jesus? But externally, I'm like, oh, you just made a bunch of people really mad and we're surrounded. But he was right. That's all they wanted. The people who should have just heard his message, that's all they wanted to hear. When are you going to fix my stuff? Miracle Man, when are you going to make things better? Are you going to make me more wine too? You guys will never believe unless you see. And Jesus pointed out a problem that was going to plague his ministry for the rest of the time he was on earth. Everywhere we went, people wanted to see signs. Prove it, Jesus. Prove it. Okay? One day he fed thousands of people. You think wine is a big deal? He gave thousands of people food. If that doesn't prove you're special, I don't know what does. And yet, the next day, he starts to teach. He says, let me teach you about real food. And they say, wait. What gives you the right to talk about that? If you're really the Messiah, you ought to prove it. What? How much proof do you need? The religious leaders, prove it. If you're who you say you are, prove it. Even Herod himself, the night Jesus was arrested, Jesus said, oh, you're that miracle guy. Can you do some tricks for me? Everybody wanted the miracles and nobody was listening to the message. It was a consistent problem. And it cut me to the core because I didn't sign up for miracles. I signed up because I believed what he said. Miracles were great. Praise God for wine and for healed kids and for figuring out if your mother-in-law is crazy or demon-possessed. You know, you bring them to Jesus. She's still the same. Okay, sorry, you picked a bad one. Okay, praise God for that. But that wasn't the point, and it became the point. And I saw something amazing happen, which I did not expect. This man, this nobleman, who had so much self-importance and was demanding that Jesus come with him, Jesus looked at him after he offended the whole crowd, and there was a silence, and he said, you people, you won't listen. The nobleman, his countenance changed. And he fell to his knees. He said, sir, please. He says, my little boy. He's on the brink of death. You're the only hope. Please come with me. Come with me and heal him. And I saw Jesus' face change. This is what I love about him. Jesus was right to say, hey, it's all about the miracles, but he also had compassion, and he knew there was a little boy struggling to breathe at home who wasn't going to make it. And I saw his face change, and I saw kindness in his eyes. And he reached his hand to this nobleman, and he lifted him up off of his knees, and he looked him in the face. He said, go, your son will live. And there was a test in that moment. See, Jesus saw everyone and they said, prove it first and then I will believe. And he looked at this guy and he said, go and see if your faith is proved right or not. And do you know what happened? He turned around and he left. I was embarrassed for my people. Because the people in Cana who were there at the wedding, they didn't have faith to go first. They were still saying, prove it. And the leaders of my country, the denominational leaders, the most religious people in my whole nation, they said, prove it first and then we'll believe. And here's this guy that said, okay, if you say so, I believe you. I was humbled. That's what we need, more of that. And I learned something valuable, and I want to share that with you. So this is something you should write down. I learned something about this nobleman and the way that God worked in his life. Because time and time again, he said, God, I need a miracle. Jesus, I need a miracle. And I need you to come with me to Capernaum. He had a very specific request. And Jesus did not do what he asked. But he healed this boy anyway. And I learned this, write this down in your notes. If God has to do things your way to earn faith, he's not God. He's a genie. He's just a miracle producer. If he has to do things your way first before you say, if you do this for me, I will believe in you. Or it happens the other way around. Because you didn't do this for me, I won't believe in you. I've seen people that way. If he has to do that, he's not really God, because God does what God wants to do on his terms, not your terms. I was a young man once who had a good father who had some money. Many of you grew up and you had a father, and when you wanted to go out and do something fun with your friends, you would say, Dad, can I have some money to go have fun with my friends? Sometimes my dad said, yeah, son. And sometimes my dad said, why don't you work and earn it, son? More often it was that. But sometimes he gave me money to go out with my friends. Listen, if Dad's love for you completely depends on whether he said yes to going out with your friends today, well, he gave me money. Dad's a good dad who loves me. He didn't give me money today. Dad's a no good, good for nothing dad who never cared about me. If that's what determines whether he loves you or not, you don't really want a father, you want a banker. That's all you're looking for. Husbands, if whether your wife is a good wife and whether she loves you depends on whether she's sexually available for you tonight, you don't really want a wife, you want a prostitute. It's a different thing. It's not a transactional relationship. It's saying, I love you and I'm good to you and I trust that you will be good to me. And if I don't see it right now, I'm not leaving because, well, I thought I knew you. But that's what my people had become. Prove it, God. Prove it first. There's something that these servants, the lowest of social class, and this nobleman near the top of the social class had in common. Write this down so you remember it. The servants who carried the wine, the nobleman who left before the answer, they had faith before they had proof. They had faith before they had evidence. And if your faith in God depends on undeniable evidence, you might be disappointed. Because you might get the proof that you want, or you might not. Faith means I don't have absolute proof of what's going to happen, but I trust what I'm hearing. I trust who's saying it to me. And these people believed and they responded before they had any proof. If you're waiting for that first, you've got it backward. You must believe. It was the message that compelled me. It was the person. After being around Jesus, it wasn't even what he said that gave me faith in him. It was just who he was. He could have told me to do practically anything. And I say, okay, Lord, if you say so. I mean, I was there the night in the storm in the boat. Jesus is walking on top of the water and he says to Peter, it's me. And Peter says, if it's really you, Lord, tell me to get out of the boat. And Jesus says, okay, do it. And he actually did it. I knew he was crazy. I didn't think he was that crazy. And he survived. Sometimes you just, whoa. Sometimes you just have to do it. You just have to have the faith to step out first. And one last thought for you to write down is, before you write this, sometimes the greatest thing that God's going to do in your life is not a miracle at all. At least not in the way that you think of it. See, Jesus looked at this nobleman. He said, go, your son will live. And he walked away. And that's all I saw in the moment. It was not until weeks later that I heard the rest of the story. And yes, I heard the rest of the story because everyone in town was talking about it. This nobleman, he turned and he went, and he didn't even rush home. He didn't even hurry. He took his time. He spent the night on the road. He got up the next day and he was continuing his journey back to Capernaum. And one of his servants came down the road and met him along the way. He said, sir, I have amazing news. Your boy is fine. Just like that, everything turned. He's perfectly healthy. And the nobleman was so excited, and he asked a very oddly specific question. He said, after celebrating, I'm sure, he looked at his servant, he said, what time? What time did things change? And he compared what time, and the nobleman realized it was at the very moment that Jesus said, go, your son would be well, and he turned in faith and started moving home. That's when the change happened. And I heard about this story. It was big news, not just because Jesus did a miracle. It was also big news because that man and his son and his wife and every servant in his home put their faith in Jesus. They became followers of Jesus. They became people that started going and telling people, you need to listen to what this man says. You need to put your faith in him. He's not just a guy. He's not just a miracle worker. He's something really unique and special and different. His whole family came to faith in Jesus. And the last thing for you to write down is this, that faith will do more in you than any miracle can ever do for you. Because I believe first, that's what changes the inside of you. That's what those of us in the inner circle, before he came back from the dead, before he walked on water, I believed in the person. And it started changing me on the inside. And I was so humbled at the contrast. Because Samaria, they're only half Jews anyway. They had a half-baked, half-wrong way to worship the Lord. They didn't worship in the temple. They didn't like us and we didn't like them. Of all people who would have the right to say, I need some proof first, it would have been Samaria. And yet I saw dozens, over 100. I saw them all come and sit and listen day after day to Jesus teach. He did no miracles. Not that I saw, at least. And yet they all believed. Jesus told me later about this conversation with the woman in Samaria. He said, I sat down next to her at the well, and John, I told her, I can give you living water. You think this water in the well is special? I can give you something even greater that will make you whole. And the water that turned into wine, that was great. But the people had a drink and they had a good time, and then they went home and nothing changed in their life. But those people in Samaria, their lives are changed forever. They became different people because of God was doing in them. And it wasn't the miracle that did it in them. It was the message. It was the person. And I understand for some of you, maybe you've become disillusioned with God because you really needed him to do something for you, and he didn't do it. Maybe you've become disillusioned with God because everybody else's situation went well, and you were the 1 in 100 where the cancer developed early. You were the exception where you did everything right, and the person that you promised your life to cheated on you and left you. You were the person who taught your children to love the Lord. Then they turned and they walked away, and you said, God, I thought you were going to help me. That's a powerful dynamic, I know. And that disillusionment can cause you to say, I want to trust you, but you didn't do things how I expected, and I don't know if I can trust a God like that. And I am telling you that faith with conditions is not faith at all. It's you being in charge. And how can I look at the God of heaven and say, if you do it my way, then I will trust you? What a joke. I was invited to trust based on who I knew and the time I had with him. And let me tell you, there were times when Jesus surprised me. I thought that the Messiah was going to build an army, kill the Romans, and build the kingdom right there in Jerusalem, and I would be up there sitting next to him. It's not how it went at all. But I didn't place my faith in the way he would do it. I placed my faith in who he is. And that is the faith that can change you. So let me say this to you, not as a rebuke, but as an invitation. Let me invite you to take the conditions off of your faith and say, God, if you provide a new job that is good, that I expect, I trust you. And if a job offer doesn't come, I trust you. And if my wife comes back and we heal the marriage, I trust you. And if she never comes back, I trust you. And if my mother gets better, I trust you. And if you choose not to heal her and she dies, I trust you. That's scary. But that will change the inside of you. And God will meet you where you are and help you to live with faith that no matter what comes, it's faith first. And I challenge you to build your faith in him that way. Hey there, just wanted to take a minute to say thanks for watching. If a friend sent you this link, it's because they believe what we talked about today is going to make a positive impact in your life. And if it did, there's probably somebody that you care about who could benefit from it. So take a minute to share this video with somebody. Post it to your timeline or send them a direct link. And if you're able, take a minute to give using the link at the bottom of the description on this video. One last thing. Maybe you feel a tug at your soul and you're ready to take the next step in your spiritual life and form a relationship with God. We've got folks here who would love to talk with you about it. So just text prayer to the number on your screen and we'll follow up with you. It's also in the description on this video in case that helps. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.